Persona 5 is among the games that people have been claiming that Japan has finally found their groove again in making games. Now, this is very important in the sense of Persona alone because there was a lot behind it when we had first been aware of the game. Persona 4, the original version, dropped back in 2008 for both Japan and the West, albeit at different dates. And for about 5 years or so, we never got anything new for our main entry until they announced Persona 5 in 2013, claiming for winter of 2014. Now, obviously, this did not particularly pan out as they wanted to, but we did eventually get the game. The game came out everywhere else in the world in April, while Japan got it in September. So here we are nearly a year later since its ever initial release, and as I said, it is a game that people can't ignore. It's a game that's hit a point that people are claiming it as one of the greatest RPGs of all time. So, naturally speaking, the company Atlus will look at this game and figure out what to do next with it. In comes what is the discussion I want to have today. The Persona 5 announcements. Now, I feel that these are important because of the fact that how Atlus approaches these new announcements will affect in the general flow of where everything's going to go. So, there's at least 3 different things to talk about. Persona Q2, Persona 5 Dancing Star Night, and Persona 5 the animation. I just want to give my thoughts because I feel like this is a very interesting and important discussion in regards to seeing where everything's going to go from here on out. So, let's tackle the first thing. Persona Q2. I don't really know what to say. As it stands, we only have one image. Just what the logo for Persona Q2 looks. And to say the least, yeah, still nothing. Now this is interesting though because the original Persona Q had a very interesting way in how it was brought into the whole story. Because Persona Q was designed in a way where it's canon, but it doesn't mess with the continuities of how it all exists. If you don't know what the original Persona Q was like, it was basically a crossover between the Persona 4 and Persona 3 cast. Now, that may not sound like much, but the idea behind when I say it's done so it doesn't mess with continuity is because it makes them meet in the primes of who the characters are. Such as the Persona 3 cast all having their members in hand in their young versions, and the Persona 4 cast all as they are. Now, of course, the timing lets it be that it's not too weird to see the Persona 4 cast as they were, as the spin-off happened more or less around the time where the Persona 4 cast was still relatively as they were, as opposed to the Persona 3 cast, which we actually got to see them in the spin-off fighting games. And in there, well, time has gone on in the world, and as such, they were actually older in there than they appear in Persona Q. Now, because of all of that, I'm very interested to see where exactly Q2 is. Now, as it stands, I don't know what they're going to do with Persona Q2, if it's going to be done in the same manner as the original Persona Q. If they're going to cross over with the Persona 4 cast, cross over with the Persona 3 cast. Maybe they'll have all 3 meet up. Or maybe, if Atlus is really jumping it here, maybe they'll do something with the original cast. Either 1 or 2. Or maybe just a whole new thing altogether. I don't know particularly how I think that's going to go. Mainly because when it came to Persona Q, people were very mixed up on it. In particular to the characters, because, yeah, they, weren't exactly written all that great per se. A lot of characters got boiled down to being very tropey, I guess? Or maybe tropey's not the right word here. But they were done so where one of their driving points in the game or their characters sort of defined them in there, and they just weren't exactly particularly big for the people who were playing the games. But as I said, since there's only the one image for the Persona Q2 game, I don't know where that's ultimately going to go. But I guess we'll find out eventually. Now, the second announcement, Persona 5 Dancing Star Knight. Yeah, I don't know. So, the original Persona 4 Dancing All Night was a thing that nobody was expecting, and to the point where some people were flabbergasted that Atlus decided to do this. Now, having played the game, I'm very hesitant to say that if you were to play all of Persona, you would need to go and play that one. Because outside of just the fact that it's a canon in the lore game, there's not really any reason to go play it, even though begrudgingly it has to happen after Persona 4 Golden. So when the announcement of Persona 5 Dancing Star Knight happened, I was a little confused. Mainly because I don't know where it's supposed to be in the game. And there's a couple of reasons why for that. First of all, I don't think it should be taking place after the game, if considering that from what it looks like, they're wearing their uniforms, and by the end of the game, the school year is over for the characters, so they wouldn't be wearing them for whatever reason. Now, it could be during the game, but off the top of my head, I can't think of any time in the game where that would have been needed to put it in there and say it happened at that moment in time. Now, the other bigger thing is the lack of personas. So, with Dancing All Night, there was a way where they wrote it in to put back Persona so it was a Persona game and make sure it wasn't lacking the Persona matter of it. In this one, there hasn't really been anything so far. Okay, yeah, sure, the original announcement with Persona 4 Dancing All Night didn't show off any personas, that, or at least last I recall, but there was still the matter that you can still tell that they were going to do something to ultimately do something with this. Star Knight doesn't really have anything going on outside of just the four characters that we've seen, our main protagonists, Ryuji, Ann, and Makoto dancing in what looks like to be Shibuya. And outside of that, nothing else. Now, because of that, I'm very hesitant on saying whether or not I'm going to check this one out either, because, again, Dancing All Night, while not exactly a bad game, it's not exactly a needed game. And if Persona 5 Star Knight is going to be of the same vein, I don't see a particular reason to look into it. Unless you're looking at Persona 3 Dancing Moon Knight, and now that's a whole different other kind of worms about that one. So as it goes, Star Knight is about in the same vein as Q2, where right now as it stands, I can't make a proper opinion, and I can only figure out what it all is when they've eventually released. But for now, all of this is nothing more than speculation and whatever possible theories people come up with. Now for the biggest announcement, personally for me. Persona 5, the animation. Now this is one I have 3 different points I want to tackle for it. 2 big ones that I think are important just in a general sense, and 1 semi-general, semi-important personally, depending on who you are. So, the first point. Story. So there's this slight stigma with anime that any anime adaptation of a video game isn't usually well received. Now, this isn't just in anime alone, as a lot of adaptations of video games have never worked that well in the past. But for anime, it's a little more tricky because you have the sense that they are trying to do the story justice, but you always have to consider the element of what's being taken out. Now, as it stands, this isn't the first Atlus product that has been adapted into an anime, as there's been Persona 4 the animation, the Persona 3 movies, and Devil Survivor 2 the animation. Now, the thing that makes these games more trickier than other games such as, say, Bayonetta or Devil May Cry, is that they're RPGs. And if you know how RPGs work, there's a lot of time put into it. And this is sort of where, when it comes to 5, it's one of those things where I know that in the end people are probably going to be very 50-50 on the thing if it plays out like I think it does. So in my run of Persona 5, I kept that at about nearly 120 hours of total gameplay. Now, obviously, there's a give or take about how much of that is what I guess you would call the filler aspect, that they would just throw that out to condense it to make it much more faster. But people are still going to find probably problems with that. Because to look at it, say this animation gets 24 episodes for it. If you take the 120, and if you take about the 24 and turn it into real time, so let's give or take that each episode is 30 minutes apiece, that's 12 hours. Meaning that the 120, for 12 hours, we would practically get about 1/10 of the overall game. Now again, you have to give or take how much of the player aspect is taken out. But that's sort of where the other problem lies. See, a big thing about Persona 4 when it was done was also people were saying that, well, they really did take out a lot of things that made it the game as it is. As the games are known to be very student life-based simulators / RPG dungeon crawlers. Now, how you progress them is, again, at your own pace, meaning that your experience is what you make of it, meaning you have your own personal journey to go through. But when you have to turn it into another story that tells you how it goes, you lose that element of the personal experience and you now have to follow through with another thing. And that brings into a lot of weird ways of how to perceive that, because you have, again, like I said, Persona 4 the animation, and how it really changed it up. And not only that, that wasn't even just a simple straightforward story. Around the last 3 episodes or so, they actually covered all the endings possible for the game. The bad ending, the neutral ending, and the true ending. And when it comes to Persona 3 movies, I haven't personally seen them myself yet, only because, well, Aniplex doesn't exactly make it easy to get their stuff in regards to money. And for some reason, Netflix has the second one, but they didn't put up the first one. I don't get it. But from what I generally picked up about the movies, they really are a focused type of movie. What I mean is, each one focuses on one very crucial detail, and anything else revolving around the time of that may not even appear at all. Now, again, the movies cover 4 parts of the whole thing: spring, summer, fall, winter. And from what I picked up, there's not a 5th movie planned out, and that's where the other issue comes. With the original Persona 3, there were 2 things that came out: the original game and an updated one called Persona 3 FES, or FES if you want to pronounce the whole thing out. Now, FES added this epilogue thing that sort of wrapped up the events of Persona 3 to fully cement it and close off the ordeal in that to push forward. And you can see where if the movies decided to already take out a lot of things within the stuff, to not even add the true ending of the whole Persona 3 story, that really does leave quite a bit of a bummer mood with that. And Devil Survivor 2, wow, they really did take out a lot of things from that. So when you get to that whole ordeal, Persona 5's story is one of those ones that is very scary to think about. Because it's unlike 4, where you had this whole normal life type of thing, 5 is going for a really big grand scheme thing. And to try to now convert what is a very driven major story into an animation where you're being told what happens, there's a lot of worrisome matters that do go with that. Now for the second point, the animation. 5 is actually interesting to me in what the whole regards to it. Because to first establish, in Persona 3 and Persona 4, the original games, A1 Pictures were brought in to do a lot of the in-game cutscenes for the stuff. And so when naturally Persona 4, the animation was announced, you'd think that they would have kept A1 Pictures to do it. But that wasn't the case, as they ended up bringing in a different company. AIC Asta, if I'm correct and that's how you pronounce it. Now, because of that, the show ends up having a very different look and design-wise for it, that if you put them side by side, you start really seeing the differences. Considering that, again, A1 Pictures handled most, if not all, the cutscenes that are animated throughout all the Persona 4 stuff, Persona 4 the animation may feel a bit jarring when you watch it. Now, why do I bring this all up? Because Persona 5 the animation has been announced that A1 Pictures will handle it. Now, of course, that would get you thinking, wait, isn't that then the right thing? Shouldn't that be what we're all happy and going for? Well, Persona 5 actually didn't use A1 Pictures for the cutscenes. Production IG was actually brought in to do the animation this time. And I have to say, 5 really does look very amazing and clean from those animations. Now, it's not that I hold anything against A1 Pictures. Hell, they're the guys who made that promotional animation for Persona 5 back before the game came out, Persona 5 The Daybreakers. And I remember it being actually pretty well done. I would have to rewatch it again now that I talk about it. But yeah, I thought it looked really clean and smooth. No, still frames do not count as animation. Now it makes me a little sad that Production IG actually isn't coming back to do the animation, because I thought it looked really well. But for the most part, I think we should be okay. After all, again, like I said, A1 Pictures has been doing the animations for Persona 4 quite some time already. And they actually were the ones who were brought back in to do Persona 4 Golden, the animation. And actually did partly the movies along with, again, AIC as well during that whole time. So we should be fine, but still, it's just a little sad that Production IG isn't coming back for this. Now for the last biggest point, the personal point for me. The dub for Persona 5 the animation. Or will there rather be? So surprisingly, Morgana's voice actress, Cassandra Lee Morris, actually did do a video on her thoughts on what that'll happen. Which, I'll put a card thing for that, you know. Are you happy, YouTube? I'm finally doing the card thing. Now, this for me held some interesting ideas, because for the most part, her general consensus on that was that she believes that it could happen. It probably will happen. And I could see it happening. But my worries that come from Persona 5 is mainly whether or not the company will do so. Because outside of Persona 4 the animation, excluding Devil Survivor, we're just looking at Persona alone, Persona 4 the animation was the only time in which any of the animes got a dub. See, past that, nothing else ever really got anything. Persona 4 Golden the animation, no return casting for that. The Persona 3 movies, nothing on there either. Persona 5 Daybreakers? Not a single thing on that either. Now, I don't know whether or not that's just other means in which why those other ones never got dubbed, but for the most part, it's put it in a sense that I'm not sure whether or not I can believe a dub will happen. Now, that could just be many different reasonings. Persona 4 the animation was actually licensed by Sentai Filmworks, as opposed to the other mediums, as those were done by actually Aniplex USA. Now, I don't know, maybe because since Sentai is the one that owns it, that they put the effort in to make a dub, which to sort of bring back Devil Survivor 2 for a little bit, that also got a dub. Granted that again the game got a different cast and it became a Texas LA thing about it is different discussion again. Which then goes back to the fact that when it came to Aniplex, none of the stuff ever got dubbed. Now that's not to say that Aniplex doesn't do dubbing, as in the past year or so, they've actually been dubbing quite a bit of their stuff now. So maybe it's just that now they're starting to look into it. Which even so, surprisingly, that maybe the Persona 3 movies will get dubbed too? Because this was another point that Cassandra Lee Morris also made, that Persona 4 got a dub. But then this is sort of where my thing also came to mind of, while 4 did get a dub, 3 didn't get a dub when those movies came out. Now, that could have just been a matter of the timing and placement of certain actors, or again, as I said, maybe the company at the time didn't look into it. But at least looking back then, maybe it wasn't going to happen either way in regards. Both Yuri Lowenthal and Tara Platt, who play Makoto Yuki and Mitsuda Korijo respectively, I believe at least had their kid around that time, and not at least maybe a year or so. And for the most part, they haven't really been in too many projects last that I've understood, although Yuri's starting to come back from what it looks like. Now, for the most part, maybe things will be different now. I've seen some people have suggest that, again, because maybe they were just waiting to get all the movies out that they could finally bring in a cast to dub it, and so we can get an official viewing of it all. And it makes sense. I mean, outside again of Yuri and Tara, everyone else seems to still be relatively doing stuff that puts them in line to come back in and work on it. Maybe the only person slightly worrisome might be for Akihiko, but at the same time, I think Liam O'Brien has enjoyed that role enough that I think he would come back to do it. But past that, nothing else has ever really gotten anything. Again, as I said, Persona 5 Daybreakers didn't get a dub, which surprises me because I would think that maybe around the time when that was happening, they could have brought over the people for that. I mean, because for the most part, everyone looks like they've really embraced the roles that they've gone for. And it surprises me a bit that the animation did not get a dub. Maybe that was just because a matter of that they were so focused on the game, they didn't feel a need to bring in that cast over into the anime. But now that this one's coming up, I gotta wonder whether or not they're gonna want to do that. Because again, as I said, the cast looks like they've really loved what they've been able to work on here, and that maybe they're given a chance to reprise everything, they'll do it. And I can see that happening, especially because again, with the announcement of the other two games, I definitely see them coming back. For the anime, it's hard to say whether or not that's going to happen or so, but only time can tell. But as for now, I can only say that for the dub, this is more of a we gotta wait and hope for the best. Anyways, those are my thoughts on everything that has recently been announced for Persona 5. I hope Atlus comes out with more news on all this stuff and gives us updates eventually, just to be able to clarify some things, and if not, at least leave us with a good thought in mind rather than worrisome ideas. Anyways, thanks for the time watching, and for any footage I may have needed to grab from other people because I don't have the equipment myself to grab any footage of what I want to talk about, due respective credits to all of them, and links to all those videos and whatnot should be in the description should that come to be. Anyways, thanks for watching. I hope you have a good day, and without further ado, this is General Gamel from Midnight Sun. Continue, everyone.